Alright, coders, let's take a look and see how you might use your gyro sensor for programming. Let's start out by just seeing what the gyro sensor readings are. So I've just made a simple program that has a continuous loop while true, and put in a motor drive block, turned on the steering component, right? And set that to be 100. And so when you watch the steering tutorial, you learned about how you can change that number to change either the direction of the turn or the type of turn that it's doing. Test your own knowledge, see if you can figure out what 100 is going to do before we start the simulation. Alright, now that you've got your prediction in your head, let's go ahead and run this and watch what happens to the value. Now if your information is not showing up, just click on that button at the bottom and you'll show your helpful display information. Shows your sensor readings, and you notice down here the gyro sensor now is just reading the value, and that value is continuing to increase. Did you guess correctly that 100 makes the robot just do a two-motor reverse direction spin in one place, so the back of the robot just stays right where it's at? If you did, good job. If you remembered that 100 positive makes it turn to the right, we should be able to test that and change that to a negative and see what happens. Let's go ahead and stop this program. Go back to our program, change that to a negative 100, and see what that does. It should now do what? Let's see if you can guess. It's now going the other direction. The number is getting smaller. Once it got to 0, what should it do? Start doing negative values. So positive and negative values are important to pay attention to. So when you're programming and you know whether you're going above or below 0 and your values that you're setting for your program to function in its flow. Alrighty, so now let's take a look at using those sensor values to make our robot do something until those values are reached. So instead of running this in a continuous loop while true, we want to take that off, and we'd like to run it until our sensor value gets to a certain level. So we're going to need to put in some data blocks there that are saying not while true, but while equal than, less than, greater to, or something like that. Let's see. Let's put that in there, and we're going to say we want it to do this turn while the sensor value is less than some amount. So we're going to change this from equals to less than or equal to. That's a good option. And then let's pull in a value here. Let's just duplicate that block and throw it in there. And let's say we want a 90-degree turn. That's what you're looking for in a square, right? So now we need to get our sensor value here. How are we going to get that in there? Well, we go to our sensor, and you're going to notice you have all your sensors listed here. You have a few choices for the gyro sensor, right? You have a get the gyro angle, reset the gyro, and get the gyro value. Which one do you think you need to use here? If you selected get the value, you were absolutely right. So we're going to put the get the value here. So it's going to go and read the value of the gyro sensor, and it's going to compare it. Is it less than 90? If it is less than 90, then it's going to perform what's in this loop. As soon as it's not less than 90, it's going to jump out of this loop. So we want to go ahead and tell it what to do once it jumps out of this loop. So we want it to turn the motors off. So let's take this drive block and duplicate it, put it down here, but instead of having the steering turned on, we can go ahead and turn that off. And instead of having, the motor power be 50, we just want them to turn off, so we'll turn that to 0. So now when we run our simulation, our robot should turn, and we should be able to watch the gyro value, and as soon as it gets to 90, it should jump out of this loop and stop. Let's see if it does that. Alright, here we go. Now, this is a perfect example of troubleshooting a problem. What's going on here? It's not working. It's not stopping. What do you notice about the gyro value? You're right. It's going negative. And I told my robot, let's stop this, to change directions when we were playing around. So it started turning left instead of right. So it's never going to get to a positive value. So I have two options here, right? If I do want to make a left-hand turned square, I can keep turning in the left direction using a negative steering value, but I would have to adjust my gyro value to not be a positive 90, but be a negative 90, because we know it's going in the negative direction from 0. I would also have to change the value to be less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to, because now as soon as it turns on, it's already going to be greater than negative 90, so we don't want that. We'd have to switch that around to be the opposite. So you really got to pay attention to what it is you're trying to do. The other option for changing would be to just change this back to a positive 100 and do a right-hand square instead of a left-hand square. Let's see if that works for us. And it's turning, and as soon as it gets to 90, it stops. Now you're going to notice sometimes those gyro values aren't exactly the same, and that's because it's simulating the real environment, and as we all know, things don't work exactly perfect in the real world either. Robots have a little bit of inertia and turn, and so all depends on motor speed and the robot build and all of those things. So sometimes you got to go in and adjust things. So as a challenge to yourself, see if you can go in and do the same thing but make it do a right-hand turn. What kind of values would you need to change to make that work? Give it a try and see if that works for you. This tutorial should give you enough information to use the gyro sensor within your programming to continue on and see if you can add to that and make it do a square using gyro for turn. You're going to find the gyro sensor to be super helpful when trying to make precise turns in your programming. Good luck to you, and more tutorials to come.